Issa's laughter rang out like a melody, light and unrestrained, as Donald, one of her most animated pupils, exaggeratedly swayed his hips in a playful attempt to imitate her walk. The rest of the class of 9 erupted in giggles, the sound blending with the rustle of leaves and chirping birds in the warm morning breeze. They were at the city's greenest escape, a sprawling park carpeted with grass and dotted with towering trees, perfect for the burst of inspiration Issa hoped would feed their upcoming art exhibition, just a month away. Not far from the children's laughter, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz S680 stood quietly at the edge of the parking lot, its deep obsidian coat gleaming like a polished mirror under the sun. The handcrafted chrome accents and the signature double M emblem on the rear hinted at its exclusive status. This wasn't just a luxury sedan, it was a mobile palace. Inside, Jace looked up from his laptop, startled. His brows furrowed, eyes darting toward the source of the laughter. The sound had filtered through the tinted, sound-insulated windows of his car, something that rarely happened. With its buttery soft leather seats, ambient lighting, and a cabin designed to feel like a first-class lounge, the Maybach usually insulated him from the world. But that laughter had pierced through, bright, infectious, impossible to ignore. He closed his laptop slowly, curiosity tugging at him. Jace shifted in the rear seat of the Maybach, his long fingers tapping anxiously against the edge of his laptop. The interior smelt faintly of leather, citrus cleaner, and the ever-present cologne he applied out of habit more than vanity. Outside, the world continued, unpredictable, messy, loud, and he hated all of it. His driver and bodyguard, David, had stepped out 10 minutes ago to grab their usual order, black coffee for Jace, always scalding, always bitter. Chocolate-infused croissants that he never admitted he actually liked. And whatever David wanted, though Jace never asked. He didn't like small talk, didn't want to know preferences. It made things complicated. The windows were tinted to a nearly imperceptible opacity, and yet Jace felt exposed. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored shirt, then sighed, leaning back into the plush leather, trying to summon calm. Just a few more minutes, then the office, then silence. He needed the familiarity of his stark, glass-walled corner space, where no one looked at him unless summoned, where the world couldn't touch him. Then he heard it again, that laugh, bright, carefree, joyful in a way that seemed almost foreign to him. It was the same voice that had startled him earlier, but now, without the shock, he let himself listen. Really listen. It was the sound of someone unafraid, someone who lived out there, in the noise, in the movement, someone who belonged to the world in a way he never had. He adjusted slightly and leaned closer to the window, angling for a glimpse, even though the idea of being seen made his throat tighten. Still, curiosity triumphed over his usual dread. She stood under a tree, head thrown back in laughter, surrounded by children, one of whom had just collapsed theatrically in the grass. Her skin glowed in the morning light, her arms gesturing animatedly as she spoke, as if the air itself needed convincing. Her long skirt danced with the breeze, and her hair shimmered as though even the sun sought her out. For a moment, Jace forgot to breathe. She was magnetic. Not for how she looked, though that alone could have stopped traffic, but for the way she was, unapologetically present, vibrantly alive. And for a man who had built walls so high that even happiness couldn't climb over them, that one sound, her laughter, felt like the first crack in the stone. He didn't know her name, didn't know why she was there, but in that second, sealed away in the comfort of his too expensive, too safe car. Jace knew one thing with disarming certainty. He wanted to hear her laugh again. And next time, he didn't want it to be from behind a tinted window. Jace's phone rang the moment he stepped into his office, the heavy soundproof door sliding shut behind him with a soft click. The room, as always, was pristine, sleek lines, cool tones, and not a single object out of place. It was his sanctuary, unreachable from the outside world. No knocks, no footsteps, no unwelcome chatter. His office had its own private elevator and entrance. No one used it but him. Even his secretary, an efficient woman named Grace, only communicated through tightly worded emails or the occasional video call when absolutely necessary. He liked it that way. Isolation was safe, predictable. He shrugged off his jacket and loosened the top button of his shirt just as he saw the caller ID. Mother. Of all the people who dared break into his silence, hers was the only voice he welcomed.
"Jace," came her voice, firm as ever. "Have you thought about what we discussed?" No preambles, no greetings. Typical. He sighed and walked to the large window overlooking the skyline, his phone pressed to his ear. She had asked him the same question every morning for the past 2 months, whether he'd finally considered marriage, settling down, continuing the Edevan name through more than just a foundation or a business deal. This time, he didn't hesitate. Yes. There was a sharp inhale on the other end, and he chuckled softly. For weeks, she'd been met with a dry "no." Today's reply felt different, even to him. His mother, never one for dramatics, was quiet for a beat too long. What changed? He let his back rest against the glass, eyes half closed, and then it came again, that laugh from the park, unbothered, wild, free. He could still hear it, like it had settled somewhere in his chest. "I met someone today," he said, almost as if confessing a secret. "I don't know her name. I haven't spoken to her. But I want her." Another silence. Then Jace did something he hadn't done in months. He laughed. Loudly. Freely. It startled even him. "If I must marry, then I want her, that woman from the park, with the laugh that made the world feel bearable." His mother's voice was calm, but there was a glint of purpose in it. "You're sure?" "Yes. I will make it happen," she said, her tone shifting into the steely edge that had built empires and brought billion-dollar deals to their knees. "Tell me everything." And so Jace did. He told her about the children, the way the sunlight hit the woman's skin, the way her voice had reached into him, despite all his careful walls. He described her with the detail of a man who had seen very little of the world, and for the first time actually noticed it. His mother listened, and when he was done, she spoke with certainty. "I will find her." As Issa stood in front of the upscale Mexican restaurant, she could hardly believe she was there, about to meet Jace, the enigmatic tech billionaire she had only ever read about in glossy magazines and online blogs. Just days ago, when his mother had approached her at school, Issa had been convinced it was some elaborate prank. Why would a man like Jace want to meet her? But his mother's words were earnest, tinged with a quiet plea. Jace wasn't a snob or aloof, as the media often portrayed him. Instead, he lived with a personality disorder that made crowds and new faces overwhelming. Meeting someone new was not a casual act for him. It was a challenge. Issa pressed her palm lightly against her chest, steadying the rush of her heartbeat. The golden lights spilling from the restaurant windows cast a warm glow across the street, and she took one long, calming breath. Then, with every ounce of courage she could muster, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. The warm scent of roasted peppers, cilantro, and slow-cooked spices greeted Issa the moment she stepped into the quiet restaurant. But there were no diners, no bustling waitstaff. The entire space, an upscale Mexican bistro in the heart of the city, had been bought out for the evening.
A mariachi trio strummed softly in the corner, their music hushed and romantic, as if aware they were playing for something delicate, almost sacred. Issa's heels clicked softly against the tile as she stepped farther inside, her eyes taking in the candlelit tables and the flicker of real fire from the adobe-style hearth in the back. Her palms were damp with nerves. Tonight she had dressed carefully, not to impress, but to respect the moment. Her dress was a simple, nude-toned slip gown that hugged her figure like a whisper. Elegant, soft, understated. She'd styled her short pixie curls in soft waves, brushing them back slightly with a touch of shine, the curls framing her face like silk. She wore no makeup, but she didn't need it. Her skin glowed with natural warmth, her eyes clear, her presence breathtaking. Still, she didn't feel like the kind of woman who belonged to a billionaire's world. And maybe that's what made her impossible to ignore. Mrs. Edevan stood near the center of the room, and at her side was him, Jace Edevan. Midnight black tuxedo, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked every inch the enigmatic mogul, polished and impossibly composed. But Issa noticed the way he stood, too still, too tightly wound. His hands, loosely at his sides, trembled, barely, but enough that her eyes caught it. His gaze remained fixed somewhere over her shoulder, and when his mother stepped forward with a smile and gestured between them, he didn't meet her eyes. "Issa," Mrs. Edevan said gently, with an almost proud smile, "meet my son, Jace." Issa nodded once, then looked directly at him. "Hi," she said softly. Still, he didn't look up. Instead, he extended a hand, and in it, a small bouquet. White lilies, wrapped in soft paper, their scent clean and calming. Issa's breath caught in her throat. Lilies. Her favorite. She hadn't mentioned that to anyone at the school, which meant he'd asked, he'd paid attention somehow. She took them gently from his hand. "They're beautiful. Thank you." His fingers brushed hers as he released the bouquet, and she felt it then, the slight tremor. He was nervous, vulnerable, even behind all the wealth and tailored armor. And suddenly she saw him. Not the media's icy recluse, not the unreachable billionaire, but a man standing alone in a room he'd emptied just to feel safe enough to meet her. Her heart ached, not with pity, but understanding. He still hadn't looked at her, and yet everything he'd done spoke louder than words.
She turned to his mother briefly, who gave her a barely perceptible nod, then stepped away toward the far corner, giving them space. Issa took a small step closer and lowered her voice. "I heard that crowds make you uncomfortable." A beat. Still no eye contact, but his shoulders lifted, barely, as if acknowledging the truth. "That's okay. We don't have to rush anything. We're just two people having dinner." right? Finally, she saw the faintest nod from him, and for now, that was enough. He had almost canceled, twice. Even after the flowers were ordered and the restaurant booked, he'd stood in front of the mirror trying to tame his hair for the 5th time, hand trembling as he buttoned his shirt, and he had almost called it off, again. "You don't do this, Jace," the voice had hissed. "You build companies, you avoid people, you don't sit across from women in soft dresses who expect conversation and eye contact and charm." But here he was. He hadn't looked at her. Couldn't. His chest had felt too tight from the moment she stepped through the doors, a walking contradiction. Elegance without effort. No makeup. Hair done like she hadn't tried too hard, but somehow it looked perfect. She was soft curves in a nude gown, and eyes that were too direct, too kind. She made him feel seen. He hated that, and wanted more of it, which made no sense. He sat stiffly across from her, the white lilies gone from his hands, her voice echoing in his mind. "They're beautiful. Thank you." She'd meant it, hadn't she? His fork trembled slightly when he picked it up. Silence, long and awkward, except for the music, except for the sound of Issa's voice occasionally commenting on the decor, or the smell of the food, or asking, "Do you like tamales?" He nodded. That was it. For the first few minutes, every attempt at conversation from her felt like pebbles tossed at a wall he didn't know how to lower. But she didn't push, didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter or force eye contact. Instead, she asked gentle, open questions, ones he could answer with a nod or a single word. "What's your favorite dish here?"
Tacos.
His voice had come out hoarse. "Spicy or mild?"
Spicy.
She smiled at that, and he felt something loosen in his chest. The first few sentences came out clipped, barely audible. But she didn't flinch, didn't react like others did, like they were waiting for him to become someone else, a more charming version, a more normal man. Instead, she let him be, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to speak. A few sentences about the restaurant, how he found it, that he'd read she liked Mexican food on her school staff profile. He hadn't meant to sound like a stalker, but she just smiled. "I'm flattered you remembered," she'd said. And somehow, the knife in his hand didn't tremble so much after that. She told him stories about the kids at school, a messy art project gone wrong, a boy who painted the principal's shoe thinking it was part of the canvas. He chuckled, actually chuckled. He hadn't done that in months. Issa didn't ask about his businesses, or his wealth, or his headlines. She asked what colors he liked, what animal he would be if he had the choice. When was the last time he'd done something just for fun? He had no answers for half of them, but somehow the questions made him feel less like a case study and more like a person. He still hadn't looked her in the eye, but for the first time in years, he wasn't calculating how long until he could leave. He was wondering when he'd see her again. The evening air had cooled as Issa stepped outside the intimate Mexican restaurant. She exhaled, warmth lingering in her chest, not just from the spicy food or the candlelit atmosphere, but from the man who, despite barely meeting her eyes, had managed to leave an impression deeper than she expected. Jace stood beside her,
still holding the delicate paper wrap from the bouquet of lilies. His tux was pristine, but his fingers fidgeted at his sides. He looked over, not quite directly at her, and murmured, "Thank you for coming tonight." Issa smiled, gentle and honest. "I'm glad I did." A pause. Then quietly, Jace asked, "Would you like to see me again?" There was the faintest tremble in his voice, a hopeful hesitance that tugged at something soft inside her. "I'd like that very much," she said. He nodded, then added, "Next time, I'll take you to my favorite place." Their next outing brought them far from the city's polished facades, down a winding trail lined with sun-dappled foliage. The hum of the world faded behind them as they entered a clearing embraced by nature. It was breathtaking. The place seemed untouched. Ferns and wildflowers blanketed the earth, and a narrow path of smooth stones led to a low cliff where a gentle waterfall spilled into a glassy pool below. The sound of rushing water was soothing, like a whisper. Tall trees arched overhead, their canopies creating a mosaic of shade and light. Birds chirped from somewhere unseen, and the breeze carried the scent of damp earth and flowering vines. Issa turned slowly, taking it all in. "This is incredible." "It's quiet," Jace said softly beside her. "Safe. I come here when the noise in my head gets too loud." They sat near the water's edge, her bare toes dipping into the stream, his long legs stretched awkwardly beside her. For a while, they simply listened to the waterfall, the silence between them calm and alive. She asked gently, "Do you ever bring anyone here?" He shook his head. "No." Issa didn't speak. The weight of that small confession settled around her like a gift. After a beat, she tilted her head. "Tell me about your work, the healing implants. What inspired it?" His jaw flexed. "My sister, Vanessa." Issa's expression softened, encouraging. "She was 10, fell down the stairs. Everyone thought she was fine. She smiled through the pain like she always did, but she had internal bleeding. By the time they realized, it was too late." His voice cracked near the end. "I was older. I should have known." Issa's breath caught. "Jace!" "That's why I designed the implants. They detect hidden traumas, internal bleeds. They respond in real time, administer medicine or alert doctors before it's too late." She reached for his hand, and this time he didn't pull away. She asked gently, "And the baby emotion translator?" He managed a small, almost shy smile. She loved babies, always tried to mimic their cries, interpret them. I used to joke she had a sixth sense. His smile faded into something more tender. "One day I saw a woman scolding her baby at the roadside. The baby was crying in pain, teething maybe, or reflux. She didn't know. I kept thinking Vanessa would have known. So I made something that could." Issa was quiet for a moment, her hand still in his. Then she whispered, "You turned grief into hope, Jace." He looked at her. Not fully, not yet, but more than he had before. And under the hush of the waterfall, something quiet and meaningful began to blossom. Not loud, not rushed, but deeply real. The water rushed below them in a gentle roar, mist curling into the air like breath. They stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder, the quiet of the secluded place weaving something intimate around them. Birds chirped somewhere above, but all Issa could hear was the thud of her own heart. Jace turned to her, really turned. For the first time, his eyes truly held hers. No flicker of discomfort or deflection, just raw, open longing. "I badly want to kiss you," he murmured, his voice almost drowned by the waterfall, but clear enough to sear into her skin. Issa's breath hitched. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached up and kissed him. It started soft, uncertain, tender, but quickly deepened as he responded, drawing her in with a hunger neither of them had voiced until now. Her arms wrapped around his neck, anchoring her to the only thing that felt real in that moment. His hands found her waist, trembling slightly, as though he couldn't believe she was letting him this close. Her tongue met his, slow and searching, and it felt like falling and flying at once. She pressed against him, needing the feel of his body, the quiet strength of him, of this man who barely spoke, but made her feel more seen than anyone ever had. "Let me love you," he whispered, his voice rough, his eyes searching hers with a vulnerability that undid her completely. Her answer was a fervent nod, followed by another, as if words could no longer reach the place her heart had fallen to. Clothes slipped away like forgotten barriers, and soon there was nothing between them but skin, touch, and the ache of longing finally unleashed. The night folded around them, and in his arms she discovered what it meant to be cherished, wholly, utterly, and without reserve. In such a short time, Issa had come to need him like air. After that dinner, they had spoken every day. Her mornings began with his gravelly "good morning," and nights ended with his soft, almost shy, "sleep well." In between, their calls stretched for hours, sometimes filled with words, sometimes just the comfort of each other's silence. Her sister Jolly had teased her endlessly about her secret phone smiles, the way she'd suddenly hum around the house or check her phone mid-sentence like she was waiting for something, or someone. But Issa hadn't told her. Not yet. She didn't know how to explain Jace, how to put into words a man who defied every assumption and expectation, who unraveled something inside her with his quiet vulnerability. He was hers in a way that felt sacred, and for now, she wanted to keep him there, just theirs. 4 months later, Jace proposed. It was quiet, thoughtful, so very him.
Instrumental music playing low in the background. The evening air held a trace of sea breeze from the open balcony where their table was set. Jace rose slowly, slipping a velvet box from his pocket. His hands still trembled faintly, but he held her gaze, this time without flinching. "Issa," he said softly, his voice steady despite the emotion flickering in his eyes. "You changed my world. Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you?" Inside the box was a simple yet breathtaking diamond eternity ring, elegant in its quiet sparkle, just like their love. Jolly gasped, already reaching for tissues. Mrs. Edevan dabbed her eyes, her smile glowing with quiet pride. David, ever the stoic bodyguard, stood discreetly behind, but there was a rare softness in his eyes, too. With tears shimmering in her own, Issa nodded, heart full. "Yes," she whispered, barely able to breathe the word. "Yes, Jace." The wedding followed weeks later. Private. Perfect. Just Jolly, Mrs. Edevan, David, and the judge. That was all. Jace had wanted to do something bigger, had even practiced standing in front of more people, but he was still on that journey. Crowds remained a wall he hadn't fully scaled, but Issa didn't mind. She saw the effort in every step he took, in every deep breath he drew, and in the way he looked at her, like she was the only person who mattered. That effort, the vulnerability, the growth,
It made her love him even more. As they waved goodbye to their small circle of loved ones, Jace gently led Issa to the private jet waiting to take them to his secluded island in the Bahamas. Her laugh echoed as the breeze teased her curls, his hand firm but gentle at the small of her back. On the flight, curled into his side, Issa murmured, "We'll have a reception when we get back. Just a celebration for our friends and colleagues. Nothing too big." He nodded, pressing a kiss to her temple. And she smiled, knowing that no matter what came next, they'd face it together. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments.
And if you love heartfelt stories that blend vulnerability, healing, and unexpected love, hit like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a moment on my next story.